According to the earliest tradition, the Magian rites of the Persians were established by the prophet Zarathustra, but no reliable information is available as to the exact time of his life and ministry. He is variously placed from the 10th to the 1st millennium before Christ. This uncertainty results, in part at least, from the destruction of the libraries of the Magian philosophers by the armies of Alexander the Great. Zarathustra, or, as said in Greek, Zoroaster, is a generic name bestowed upon several initiated and divinely illumined lawgivers, religious reformers among the Chaldeans. As in the case of Manu and Vyasa in India, as in the case of Moses in Israel, Orpheus in Greece, and Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, time has corrupted into one personality several magician philosophers by the name of Zarathustra. The result has been a pseudo-historical account in which the actions of several men are fitted together to make one highly metaphysical tradition. The different parts can probably never be properly ordered, because the Zend language is utterly extinct, and the old records have found no perpetuators in the modern world. Greek writers derived the term Zoroaster from a combination of syllables, so that the word can have one of several meanings. First, as a worshipper of the stars. The second meaning is the image of secret things. Third meaning is a fashioner of images from hidden fire. And fourth, literally the son of the stars. The oldest of the Iranian books contains a collection of the teachings and revelations from 14 of the ancient prophets of Iran, and in this list Zoroaster stands 13th. It is not improbable that at some prehistoric time, a great sage and initiate of the original mysteries of the Aryan Hindus did establish the line of priest-prophets which came later to bear his name. There is ample precedent for such a circumstance. In the Hermetic tradition of the Egyptians, many generations of initiate priests lost their identity, as it were, and were absorbed into the one all-powerful name of Hermes. Greek writers distinguish at least 6 Zoroasters. The first was definitely a Chaldean, the third a Persian, and the 6th a Babylonian. The last of these, according to Lucius, was a contemporary of Pythagoras, who visited and studied with him when Pythagoras was carried as a prisoner to Babylon. Space prevents a detailed examination of the conflicting accounts relative to the comparative importance of these several Zoroasters, and it is questionable whether even an exhaustive analysis would result in any conclusions of primary importance. The student should bear in mind that Zoroaster, as he descends to us in modern history, is the personification of a noble philosophical system founded by a semi-divine mortal at a remote period in the world's history. Most accounts agree that Zoroaster was born of an immaculate conception, much like Jesus. The legend tells that his father, in performing religious ceremonials, drank the sacred homa juice, which is the same as the soma drink of the Hindus. As a result, his wife conceived without knowing a man. The nativity was accompanied by supernatural manifestations and occult circumstances appropriate to the incarnation of an avatar or divine being, and it is said that all nature rejoiced at the birth of the prophet. Perlman, the genius of evil, and his host of demons hid themselves in the darkest parts of the earth to escape the splendor of the newborn sage. At the time of the incarnation, a ring of heavenly light surrounded the house. and according to a most ancient Greek tradition, Zoroaster was the only mortal ever to laugh at the moment of birth. At 30, Zoroaster began his ministry. With a small group of followers, he traveled into Iran, and on at least one occasion performed a miracle similar to that attributed to Moses, for he caused a sea to part, and with his followers he passed through on dry land. It was on May 5th precisely, at dawn, that Zoroaster received his first holy vision. He was by the side of a river, and suddenly there appeared to him the vast figure of a god. The celestial being told him to cast aside his body and follow him. He was lifted up into the presence of Ahura Mazda. Here he received from the lips of the eternal power the doctrines that he was to go teach. After this first vision, there came 6 others, dealing principally with the secrets of the angels. He beheld the angelic and archangelic hosts. The visions being completed, the prophet, initiated in divine mysteries, faced then the classic temptation. Perlman and the hosts of the Inferno tried in every way to destroy the prophet or turn him from his course. The temptation of Zoroaster follows in general the temptation of Jesus and Buddha. Victorious over all the forces of evil, and armed with righteousness, Zoroaster was able to overcome Perlman and scattered his evil spirits. The prophet's first convert was in fact his own cousin. But the conversion of the local king was the most important episode in the life of the prophet. This powerful Iranian prince, surrounded by his court, his ministers and priests, was seated upon his throne in the royal palace. Suddenly, the great stones that formed the roof of the palace slowly opened as though by magic, and through the entrance descended the prophet, bearing a cube of fire in one hand and a scepter of cypress wood in the other. Zoroaster seems to have been a powerfully built man, of large figure, who wore white robes and a turban-like cap with a long streamer. Thus attired, he faced the king, and according to the law of the day, he was examined by the priests and the philosophers. After 3 days of constant questioning, Zoroaster emerged victorious. The conversion of the king was followed by the conversion of most of his court, and the religion became the official faith of the country. Zoroaster had accomplished his mission, and the idolatrous cults were gradually abolished. For many years, it is said that Zoroaster spent time wandering up and down through Iran teaching. But after many years had passed, while the king was away from his kingdom, the armies of Iran were defeated by a neighboring kingdom. The army destroyed the Zoroastrian temple, pillaged the shrine, extinguished the sacred fire, killed the priests, and killed Zoroaster. The Greek account of the death of the prophet is that a great flame descended from the constellation of Orion. This celestial fire took him up into the sky, back to the starry heavens from which he had come. Although Zoroaster was unquestionably one of the greatest original thinkers of antiquity, it should not be supposed that he evolved his entire theology without contact from other religions. The roots of Zoroastrianism are deep in primitive folklore of the Aryan peoples. Brahmanism, Chaldean philosophy, Egyptian metaphysics, and even Chinese traditions do appear as elements in the Magian doctrine. Zoroaster's contribution was a new interpretation of the older beliefs. The ancient Zoroastrian doctrines were an extraordinary compound of monotheism, anthropomorphism, and pantheism. First cause as an infinite extension and an absolute diffusion of infinite life. Like the Chaldeans and Egyptians, the Zoroastrians defined God in this way. Behind all the Persian philosophy, there is an absolute extension of being, the space god, the boundless circle. This unknown, unpassing principle they term Zoroana Akern. Out of Zoroana Akern emerges the radiant, glorious, manifested creator, not space but matter, and its name is Ahura Mazda, space objectified as a gigantic entity. Zoroana Akern, the thrice deep darkness, like a womb of creation, contains ever within itself the power of objectification. Periodically, Ahura Mazda, the manifested God, the Logos, comes forth, for a certain time at least, and then retires again into the eternal darkness. Space has two aspects, unmanifesting and manifesting. When space manifests, it is Ahura Mazda. When it remains unmanifested, it is Zoroana Akern. The luminous being Ahura Mazda, moving in the midst of space, formed the universe and incarnated himself in the luminous parts of the world, finally manifesting as the sun. The sun, as materially objectified light, battles with the darkness to sustain the life of the world. When Ahura Mazda, as the creative intellect, began the fabrication of living things, Perlman, the negative principle, created shadows or bodies in which the luminous principles were imprisoned. Thus we have a new triad consisting of Ahura Mazda, Ormuzd, and Perlman, or spirit, soul, and body, or the creating, preserving, and destroying phases of existence, otherwise known as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The old Persians were astrophilosophers. They used astrology as a symbolical science to represent the mystery of creation, using the zodiac as a key. They said that during the first three signs, the gods were created. Aries was Zoroana Akern, Taurus was Ahura Mazda, and Gemini, the twins, was the third, the Logos. Ahura Mazda then caused to issue out of his own nature 6 secondary divinities, with himself, constituted the septenary. These are called the Amesha Serpentas, the Amesha Spentas, the 7 gods of the dawn, the world builders, the 7 Elohim of the Jews, or the Dhyani of the Buddhas. The 7 gods created the 7 worlds. They are the spectrum of light, the 7 tones of sound, and finally descending through the different states of consciousness became the 7 planets. They build the 7 heavens and the 7 earths. Ahura Mazda incarnates himself in the first heaven, the first sphere of Saturn, and sends forth his 6 regents. He then incarnates again in the lowest world, and sending out his 6 manifestations, creates continents. Thus the 7 are the divine keepers of the earth, the lords of the divisions of time and place. They are the 7 patriarchs and the 7 stars of the little bear. When Ahura Mazda sends forth the 6 divinities out of himself, a similar phenomena manifests in the shadow world below. 6 demons emerge from Perlman to become the adversaries of the gods. These are the spirits of evil, and from them issue the 7 vices to oppose the 7 cardinal virtues. According to Persian tradition, the world lasts for 12,000 years, but by these years it is clearly they meant 12 great periods of time. The periods are divided into two parts, each of 6,000 years, and each of these in turn is divided into two parts, of 3,000 years, the whole being the great circle of the zodiac. In the first 3,000 years, that is, the signs Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, Ahura Mazda dwells in the light of his own presence. This is the age of the gods, a golden age. In the second 3,000 years, the creation of the universe takes place. Out of Cancer, the Great Mother, the avatar principle of the world is formed. At the point between Virgo and Libra, man is created, the progeny of the celestial virgin. Thus the 6 days of creation. Then the kingdom of Ahriman is established. He controls the world for 3 cycles, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. In the last 3,000 years, the progeny of the divine instructor breaks the rule of Ahriman. The Battle of Armageddon takes place. Ahriman is defeated, and through his repentance is restored to the light. Therefore, at the end of 9 cycles, the divine age is restored. In the last 3,000 years, the universal kingdom is returned to Ahura Mazda and his son, the Messiah. At the end of the full 12,000 years, or 12 cycles, comes the deluge, which is Pisces. The universe is absorbed back into its original cause. Ahura Mazda draws all things back into the primitive nature and returns to sleep where, like the Vishnu of the Hindus, he floats upon the waters of the abyss, the couch of the 7 serpents. From this we get a new triad of principles. First, Ahura Mazda, the manifested Logos, the first principle of the creating triad. Out of him issues, second, the Son, the Messiah, the Logos, the Word. This being is the breath of the Creator, the mouth-born Son. Third in the triad is Zarathustra, upon whom the Word descends, the perfect prophet, the Word made flesh. The 7 Spentas became incarnate in man, his 7 bodies, his 7 principles, 7 organs. These are the creators manifesting their energies in the sustaining of the body. The perfection of man is the great work. The good and evil cease when truth is firmly established. Wisdom destroys all the shadows, in which lurk the evil genius of Ahriman and the demons. Darkness is not destroyed by violence, though. It is dissipated by the very presence of light. The moment man contains within himself the source of light, all the illusions of Ahriman disappear. So wisdom is like a mysterious fire within, symbolized by the flame on the Zoroastrian altar. As fire consumes the wood, so the flame of truth consumes the lower elements created by Ahriman. Here now are a few quotations from the holy book of Zoroastrianism known as the Avesta. Commit no slander, so that infamy and wickedness may not happen unto thee. For it is said that slander is even more grievous than witchcraft. Form no covetous desire, so that the demons of greed may not deceive you, and the treasures of the world may not become tasteless. Suffer no anxiety, for he who is a sufferer of anxiety becomes regardless of enjoyment, unable to enjoy anything of the world or the spirit. Contraction happens to his body and soul. Thou should not become presumptuous through too much treasure or wealth, for in the end it is necessary for you to leave it all behind. Turn yourself not away from the three best things: good thought, good words, and good deeds. The law of Mazda cleanses the faithful from every evil thought, word, and deed, as a swift rushing mighty wind cleanses the plain. With enemies, fight with equity. With a friend, proceed with the approval of friends. With a malicious man, carry on no conflict, and do not molest him in any way whatsoever. With a greedy man, you should not be a partner, and do not trust him with leadership. With an ill-famed man, form no connection whatsoever. With an ignorant man, do not become a confederate or an associate. With a foolish man, make no disputes. With a drunken man, do not walk together on the road. And from an ill-natured man, take no loans. Think purely, speak purely, and act purely. This is the sum and substance of the ever-living law, which Zoroaster